ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the fifth and final part of the tour of Norway. It's early dusk here in Notodden, and for our approach to Oslo today, we will be showing off some of the fantastic evening lighting in X-Plane 11. Before we go, we'll have just a quick look at the map. So today we are doing the fifth and final leg of the tour of Norway, and we'll start here in Notodden and follow this waterway down to the twin cities of Skien and Porsgrunn. And this series of lakes and rivers, it's called Skienvassdraget. And it's an important part of this province of Telemark. And then as we come out here in the province of Vestfold, the border is here, we'll be passing over a series of small towns or cities, which will, in this area, will have loads of things to talk about. Then we'll come in over the Oslo Fjord and follow it to its end, where we will be flying over Oslo, the capital of Norway. And finally, we will touch down over here at Gardermoen, the main airport of Oslo. And of course, we'll have Ortho4xp coverage all the way in. So let's get going. This airplane is highly unstable on the ground. I think it's due to my joystick, so sorry about that. Gear up. So here is Notodden. I've been here 2 times maybe, and it's a relatively small town of some 12,000 people, and it has a very similar history to Rjukan, which we flew over in the last video, with a proud industrial history, and today the industry is mostly gone, so they're trying to attract culture and tourism. And I think maybe the most interesting thing I could mention right now about Notodden is this building they have right over here, which is called the Book and Blues House, which they built very recently to sort of attract more people to this city. And all over Norway, small cities and also the larger cities are now building these culture houses, palaces of culture, I guess you could call them. And of course there's a lot of heated debate on the effectiveness and cost of building such architecturally stunning buildings only to attract newcomers. So now we are flying over Heddalsvannet, which is this lake here, and it's the first part of Skienvassdraget, which will take us out to the coast. In the hills over here runs what we call Sørlandsbanen, which is the main railway line down south to the cities of Kristiansand and finally Stavanger on the western coast. And those are 2 pretty important cities in Norway, so this railway line is also relatively important. But funnily and maybe annoyingly enough, it almost all the way down to Kristiansand, it runs deep inland in these valleys, where there's not that many people living here. Most of the people live out by the coast where we are flying now. So between Oslo and Kristiansand, there's very few large places where this train stops. And the reason why they built it in here and not out by the coast is because, well, apparently they were afraid that this strategically important railway line could be bombed from the sea. It's of course not so relevant today, so now it's just annoying, I guess, to a lot of people. Over here is the second lake, which is called Nordsjø, and it's connected with Hedalsvannet through this river. So I think from the ocean you can sail all the way up here and deep into Norway through this vassdrag. If you can see all these lights over here, this is a small town called Ulefoss, and it used to be, I don't know how important it is today, but it used to be one of the most important lumber mills and ironworks in Norway back in the 1600s. And if you visit old cabins, old houses anywhere in Norway, they'll all have an old fire stove called Ulefoss built right here. And it also has a pretty interesting history. There is a very beautiful mansion in this town. Here you can see it. And this was a house built by a famous industrialist in the early 1800s. And his name was Nils Aall. And he was probably quite important to the future of Norway. Because, well, the background here is that during the Napoleonic Wars, the Kingdom of Denmark, which Norway was a part of, sided with the French and Napoleon, and they fought against Sweden, among others, which was on the Entente side. And of course, Napoleon was defeated, and Sweden was given Norway as a prize, victory prize. But the Norwegians themselves, they didn't really want to be a part of this, so they instead declared independence and wrote a democratic institution. And this, of course, was unacceptable to the Swedes, who had sacrificed a lot to win this war. So they started a new war against Norway, this newly formed kingdom. And after a couple of skirmishes, this newly formed state of Norway realized that it didn't stand much chance against the battle-hardened veterans from the Napoleonic Wars of Sweden. So they surrendered, and they sent this guy who lived here, Nils Aall, I think the mansion is right here, to negotiate. And maybe to a large part because of him, the terms were very good for Norway. They dictated that Norway would be allowed to govern itself except for foreign policy, and that's really that was the beginning of sort of the blossoming of the modern state of Norway. And about 100 years later, independence came to Norway from Sweden, quite peacefully. So that's a small story related to this place of Ulefoss. As you can see here, this river here, it has a bunch of these water locks, which is built to connect this sea of Nordsjö with the Bandak Sea over here. This is part of what we call the Telemark Canal, which allows you to sail all the way from in here and through these cities and out to the coast. And when it was finished back in the late 1800s, it was actually called in European travel books the eighth wonder of the world. Although I'm not sure how fair that description is. Anyways, it's still quite impressive, and Norwegian state television, which is a great champion of slow TV, has filmed and showed the entire trip up this canal, which lasts several hours, and shown it on prime time television in Norway. And of course there's a link on YouTube, so I'll put that below if you're so inclined. So as you can see, we're now approaching a pretty big and populated area. And this is really the beginning of the main population center of Norway, which stretches from right about here and all the way up to Oslo and further on up north to Hamar, where we started the first video. All in all, that's close to 2 million people. This first part here is called Grenlon, and it has about 100,000 people living here. It's named after the tribe which came here some 1,500 years ago, maybe, which was called the Grents. And as I said, it consists of two cities, Skien over here and Porsgrunn over here. And Skien right here, I've never been to Skien, but I always had a great impression of this city, because it used to be, it might have been the capital of Norway at some point, if it weren't for other twists of fate, because this used to be one of the most important cultural, political centers, economic centers in the medieval ages in eastern Norway. This was also the birthplace of Henrik Ibsen, a famous playwright who I mentioned a couple of times in this video. But I do have a friend who comes from this city, and I remember asking her how she liked Skien, and she said she hated it, much to my surprise. But I don't think her reason for hating the city had that much to do with the city itself, but probably more that she probably felt like she was growing up a little bit in the periphery out here, and that she was longing to go into the big world. And I believe right underneath this factory over here was the location of one of Norway's first monasteries, which was built by this guy called Dag Eilifsson, after he had gone on a crusade to the Holy Lands of Jerusalem with the Norwegian Crusader king Sigurd Jorsalfar. So now we're coming over to the twin city of Porsgrunn, and it's a very industrial city. It's one of the few industrial cities of Norway which still has a large manufacturing industry. So this whole island here, it's just industry. It's called Herøya, and I believe it does have one of the largest fertilizer factories in the world, and they also make a lot of plastic products out here. Might ask why they built another city so close to the medieval city of Skien. And the reason is actually that this waterway, which they used to transport the lumber from all over up these valleys and out to other European countries, it actually clogged down during the 1600s due to mud and sawdust. So they had to build a new harbor, where Porsgrunn is located today. And so these two twin cities started growing right next to each other, until they grew into basically one city today. But still some stubborn locals refuse to actually merge them into one city. But it's probably going to happen at some point in the future. Gonna have a little bit of lag now as we cross into a new zone, and the computer needs to load textures. This is the price of flying with ortho coverage. So now, as you can see, we have reached the coast of Norway, and beyond the horizon here lies Denmark, and over here, beyond this horizon, lies Sweden. So you can understand why this area functioned as a sort of a gateway to Europe, and why it has a lot of medieval history. Right now we're going to start turning a little bit north to reach the Oslo Fjord. The road you see over here, this is the main highway to the south of Norway. It's called E18, and it actually starts in Ireland, like a couple of other Norwegian roads I've mentioned. and it passes through Ireland, Scotland, England, Norway, and from Oslo it's the main road into Stockholm, and there it continues through Finland and ends up in St. Petersburg, Russia. This whole area you see in front of us now, it's called the Oslo Field in geology terms. And it has a very rich soil, which is another reason why this place is where most people in Norway live. And the reason is because this road over here, it used to be more or less the border between the huge ice fields that covered all of Scandinavia during the ice ages and the rest of Europe. I think even earlier the ice also went much further south, but geologically you can see a very clear border right here where the ice used to be. And the border is where the ice sort of dumps a lot of stone and minerals which it has carried in from the mountains. And this is why this earth is so fertile. And even more so further down south because of this phenomenon. In Denmark, for example, they have really great farming soil there. So up in front of us now is a city called Larvik, which has about 45,000 inhabitants. And it came about during the 1500s around the farm of a big-shot noble family from Denmark known as the Treschows. And they're still a pretty famous family in both Norway and Denmark. And during this period there was a lot of Danish noble people coming in from the sea here to settle in this whole area. And a lot of them still live here today, so you'll hear a lot of fancy Danish last names from people who live in this area. And maybe a little bit because of this, this town still has a direct ferry connection over here to Denmark. Anyways, this town is quite famous in Norway for two things. This lake here is called Farris, and these stones that the ice dumped in this area that I told you about, they form the sort of natural filter right here. And when the water passes through here, it's really filtered and cleaned, and a lot of minerals is added. So they built a factory over here which produces mineral water called Farris, which you can buy in any store almost in Norway. Another thing about this city of Larvik is that they produce, maybe over here, what I believe to be the national stone of Norway, called Larvikit. And you maybe haven't heard about this before, but you've definitely or probably seen it because it's very popular as a decorative material, sort of dark and marble-like. And I checked this on Wikipedia. Apparently both Harrods in London and the UN building in New York and the Burj Al Arab skyscraper in Dubai are some of the famous buildings that are decorated with Larvikit stone from beneath this little town in Norway. So I think right here is the location of what was the first city or town in Norway, at least as far as I know. As you can see, it doesn't exist anymore, but this was a Viking city called Kaupangen. So in front of us here is another city of about equal size to all the other cities that I've been talking about here. This is Sandefjord, and it has about 60,000 inhabitants. And it's the site of a lot of really good summer memories for me, because former girlfriend and we used to watch a family house in this area. And from right about this area and all the way down south, you'll find thousands upon thousands of tourists coming in, mainly from the city in the summer months. And the reason is because these archipelagos here, they're really, really nice during the summertime for swimming and bathing, and it's very, very idyllic. Through the coast of southern Norway and all along the coast of Sweden, you'll find these archipelagos, which are called skärgård in Scandinavian languages. Anyways, Sandefjord is not. It's one of the few cities in this area which doesn't have a important medieval history. It was actually founded at some point, maybe 150 years ago, by a guy called Heinrich Taulo, which is no doubt one of these Danish families who settled in this area. And he started a spa right here, which apparently became really, really famous, and the whole city grew around this spa, because apparently it was said that it was so good for your health to go to this mineral spa that royalty and politicians from all over Europe would come here. At least until they probably learned that there was nothing special about this spa when it came to your health. So I think the building still exists, but I don't think there is a spa there anymore. Second thing about this town of Sandefjord is that it used to be the main base for all of the whalers in Norway traveling to Antarctica to hunt for whales. So this is another reason why this town grew quickly. And no doubt because of this, they built in the shipyard here the Endurance, which was the expedition ship for Ernest Shackleton, the famous English explorer who went on this ill-fated expedition to the South Pole. Today I think Sandefjord is probably most famous for this airport over here, which is called Torp, or Oslo Airport Sandefjord Torp, or something like that, which is a little bit of a marketing trick, because Oslo is 2 hours north from here if you're in a car, so we're far from Oslo. So this is of course the main hub for Ryanair in Norway. So if you've flown with Ryanair to Norway, no doubt been here. I think you can see a Ryanair airplane down there. There is KLM, they also have a city hopper route to Amsterdam from here. Right over on this side, right about here, I believe, is the former main competitor of this airport, because Ryanair also used to fly here to this twin city right across the fjord in Rygge Airport. But just a few months ago they introduced a new airplane tax in Norway, and this caused Ryanair to scale back their operations. So this airport now is closed for civilian traffic. Now up in front of us now comes the city of Tønsberg. And when I got my driver's license many years ago, the first place in the world I decided to drive on my own was this city of Tønsberg. And the few times I mentioned this to Norwegians, or mainly people from Tønsberg, they will cry out and ask, why on earth would you drive to Tønsberg of all places? And the answer is that during the final year of high school in Norway, you have to write this huge essay on Norwegian literature. And I chose to write about a writer called Kåre Holt, who lived in this area for many years. He was a journalist who wrote a lot about industrial workers and their lives and such things, but his main work was this absolutely brilliant trilogy, fictional trilogy about a real Norwegian king, medieval king called Sverre Sigurdsson. He was very complicated and interesting king. And this book has a lot of, or the trilogy has a lot of really vivid and beautiful descriptions of this city during the medieval ages. So I just had to come here and see it for myself. But of course, my visit was slightly underwhelming because there's hardly any leftovers in this city from the medieval ages. The only thing I could mention is that the street pattern over here in the downtown area is more or less exactly the same as it used to be in medieval Tønsberg, with these streets running in parallel, following the terrain along the harbor area. And up here on this little hill, they've built a tower to commemorate the big fortress which used to be here, which is where the kings would live for periods. Today this city is quite aware of its medieval history, and they try to market it as the oldest city in Norway. But as you can now tell, this is another marketing trick. Although it's still very old and has an interesting history. So if you're interested in reading about the medieval ages, and you don't want to read sort of pulp literature, which is very common in this genre, then I really recommend this Norwegian writer Kåre Holt and his King trilogy. It's really beautiful and has some great descriptions of characters, really. So coming up right here is what you might call the Alcatraz Island of Norway. It's called Bastøy, and it used to be a correctional institution for difficult boys. Back in 1915, some of these small boys who lived here, they started a riot or rebellion due to the very harsh way they treated these boys. And they burnt down a couple of buildings and they tried to escape the island. And back then the main Norwegian naval base was actually located right over here. It's called Karl Johan Svern. And so to stop this little boy rebellion, they sent a battleship with armed soldiers and scout airplanes against these poor boys. This little event was actually turned into a pretty decent film a couple of years ago, which is where the picture I showed you comes from. So I'll put a link to the trailer below if you're interested. Also, a couple of years ago, the American filmmaker Michael Moore made a documentary about this prison, how it is today. Because it's not so bad anymore. It's now a prison for special prisoners that the government deems quite likely to be able to leave crime for good. So the prisoners there, they're allowed to walk around freely, and they use tools and build stuff, and they have a lot of freedom and responsibility. And Michael Moore took an interest in this. So now we are over the Oslo Fjord. We'll follow this up here to its end. This peninsula over here is called Hurum, and back in the 80s, this is where they wanted to build the main airport for Oslo and also Norway, I guess you could say. And this would have made a lot of sense because, as you can tell, this peninsula is quite empty, but it's located right in the middle of this huge population center of Norway. People living on all sides here, and also quite close to Oslo. And the airplanes coming in for landing could have made their descent over the fjord here. So would have been a good place for an airport. But just as they were ready to put the shovel in the ground, the Norwegian Meteorological Service delivered a report saying that the area had too much fog. And this caused a lot of scandal, because of course a lot of people, especially in this area, they were really rooting for this place as the airport island. And this and the debate had been going on for years already. So everyone was sort of hoping that now we can finally start building this airport. And this engineer called Jan V. Borg, he was convinced that the government of Norway had actually faked this report in order to build the airport where it's located today, due to some other political reasons that I won't get too much into. And this engineer, he claimed to be able to prove it, but then he suddenly jumped out of a window in a hotel in Copenhagen. And Danish police claimed that it was a suicide, but this was of course the source of a lot of conspiracy theories back then. In any case, fog or no fog, the main airport of Oslo and Norway is today not located here, but much further north. And I do believe that anger about this issue has more or less settled many years ago. And I guess that they didn't build the airport here is a large reason why this Ryanair airport over here came to be so popular. See this small island over here. It's called Oscarsborg, and it's a coastal fortress which has a pretty interesting history from the Second World War. On the night of April 9th in 1940, when the Germans invaded Norway and Denmark, they came sailing up here with a part of their fleet in the middle of the night in the cover of darkness, and their goal was to conquer Oslo up here as quickly as possible. And this little fleet, it had been spotted out in Skagerrak behind us by a fishing ship, which was also covertly working as a scout ship for Norway. And they had reported their sightings to the government and the High Command of Norway, and they were in complete disarray. Had to get up in the middle of the night and were just in total paralysis over what to do. So they didn't give out any orders for any of the military. And the commander out there, Colonel Birger Eriksen, who is a hero or a celebrated hero today, he was this military type who, for better or worse, took things in his own hands. And he was in no doubt when he saw the fleet coming up here that this was an invasion, and he decided to attack. Even though the government had, I don't know if they had said to stand down or just await further orders, was something that they were saying. And the result was that they ended up sinking the lead ship of the fleet coming up here, the cruiser Blücher. Sank right over here, and the rest of the fleet retreated back into the Sea of Skagerrak and waited for the Luftwaffe to bomb this island into oblivion. And this caused a delay in the invasion, which was what allowed the government and king up here to escape into the valleys of Norway and avoid being captured, like for example, the king and government of Denmark, which was kept hostage for the entire war. And this escape was briefly mentioned in the first video of this series. And a couple of months ago, they released a film here in Norway called The King's Snow. It was a big sort of high-cost production with advertisements all over the subways of Oslo. And it's about the escape of the king during these few days in 1940. And I didn't think the film was a masterpiece, to be honest, although it wasn't bad. But it did have a pretty decent scene showing this battle of the fjord here. And I checked, and of course it's been uploaded to YouTube already. So I'll put a link below if you're interested in seeing a dramatization of how this went down. We're now coming up to the end of the Oslo Fjord. And today there's still a lot of ferries sailing up and down here in shuttle traffic between mainly Oslo and Denmark and Germany. And they're pretty cheap, so if you ever plan on going to Norway, I think sailing up here is a pretty spectacular way to first approach the country. It's a very stark difference when you leave Denmark or Germany and the landscape over there and you come in over here. I actually grew up in the hills over here, so when I was young I would stand on the balcony with my binoculars and follow all the ferries sailing up and down. I used to know all the times and all the names of the ships and stuff like that. Back in the old days there also used to be a direct line between Oslo and New York called the America line, like a lot of other countries which had a large emigration to America. And back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, the arrival of this America ship was a huge event. Thousands of people would gather by the wharf to see these exotic, mostly Norwegian Americans, walk ashore with all the dazzle of the new world about them. And sometimes during the winter, the end of the fjord here would freeze to ice. So the America ship actually had to anchor up on this small island down here called Storsteilene. And then for the last part of the trip, people would ride on ice sleds drawn by horses into Oslo. So as you can see, we are now coming up on Oslo in front of us. And all of these islands out here, this is, if you ever come to Oslo in the summertime, this is the best place you could possibly be. There are ferry connections from the city hall, and just being out here on these archipelagos and swimming and barbecuing and having a beer is just absolutely fantastic. This peninsula over here is called Fornaboo, and this used to be the location of the Oslo Airport before this airport debacle that I just mentioned. And of course they had to move it because there was a runway here and a small runway here, but there was no room for expansion. And I was never old enough to fly from here, but I do remember picking up a couple of visitors and also seeing the airplanes coming in for landing from the family house up here. Today they're trying to turn this former airport area into sort of a Silicon Valley of Oslo. And the former airport terminal, which was right about here, it still exists and it's been turned into a office building. And you can still go and have a cup of coffee in the cafeteria and sit where we used to stand and wait for relatives in this pretty nice terminal arrival area. So right about now we are technically in Oslo. The border is this river down here. And this is a city I love and hate, as with any place where you spend the most of your life. And among locals it's actually called the Tiger City, even though this was meant in a very negative way originally. And the term was coined by a writer called Bjørnstjerne Bjørnson, and he used it to describe the people of Oslo, which he felt were like predators like tigers. But still, like a lot of these negative terms, it's become a celebrated thing today. And the first thing you see when you come out of the train terminal over here is a big bronze statue of a tiger. And today I would say it's all in all a pretty nice city. I could probably talk for hours and hours about all the things I like and dislike about Oslo, but I'll keep it relatively short for this little overflight. So this is the Royal Palace, and this is the downtown area. It's built in a sort of very rectangular way by command of the Danish king, who wanted to move the city over here from, like, this is where the medieval city was located, but it kept burning down all the time. So the Danish king said, move it over here, build everything in stone, and build a square grid for the streets. This is the fastest growing capital city of Europe, and the real estate prices are just increasing by 12% or something each year. It's totally crazy. And there's of course talk of a bubble, so we'll see if this, I mean, it can't last forever. And there's a lot of change going on in the city for the moment. This whole coastal strip over here, it used to be just industry and industrial wharfs, and the highway also just covered the entire coastline. And this was after the war. They built everything in a very pragmatic way and didn't care too much about how it was to live in the city. And now they're sort of trying to turn the whole coastline into a promenade and museums and cafes and stuff like that. So they're still building, but in maybe 5 to 10 years it's going to be completed. If you ever come to Oslo, of course you'll spend a lot of time in this downtown area where everything happens. But if I could make you one recommendation, it would be to walk a little bit out into this half circle here around the downtown area. Because this half circle, it was built more or less at the same time during the late 1800s, when Oslo was a booming industrial town. It was booming so fast that if that kept booming like that up until today, that would have like 4 million people living here. And nonetheless, this belt, as I'm talking about around here, it was mostly built by architects and builders that were educated in Germany. And they of course built the way they were taught in Germany. So it's said that walking around in these streets is a little bit like how it might have been to walk around cities like Berlin or Hamburg in the days before they were destroyed by the war. I don't know how true this is, but it's still a very nice area. And this, let's see, this park right over here, I believe, is my favorite area in all of Oslo. It's called st.hanshaugen, and it lies in a pretty nice district, which is not too snobby and not too hipsterish either. And it has a very nice view towards the fjord, and I really like this place. So let's continue on our trip. This here is called Groruddalen, and it's a slightly industrialized part of Oslo. And on the side of the valley, here and here, they've built a lot of social housing or government housing during the 60s and 70s. Oslo doesn't really have a Oslo wave like Bergen does when it comes to music, but being by far the largest city of Norway and the capital, still means that Oslo produces a lot of famous music and films and culture in general. And, if I were to mention just one band which I think is the essential Oslo band, it's a band called Jokke og Valentinerne. And they're not very famous outside of Norway, and I think the reason is because they sing in Norwegian, and what makes this band brilliant is not their music per se, but their lyrics. But if you understand what they're singing, it's songs that are very funny in a way, but very dark, about sort of the dark sides of life. And they sing in a way which I think is very, very relatable to most people. So just to give you a small example, they have this song called Her kommer vinteren, or Winter is Coming. And it's this sort of sarcastic song about being slightly in a bad mood and pessimistic, and not being so happy about being surrounded by overly positive people. And then you're looking forward to winter, because then all those people disappear. And when in late autumn, when it's getting quite cold in Oslo, a lot of clubs and bars will often put on this song around maybe 12, 1 o'clock at night. And everyone will just sing along in this tongue-in-cheek welcoming ceremony for the winter, which is, to be honest, not that fun. But yeah, a great band. And of course the singer has a cult status because he died quite young. So, as we are now leaving Oslo and coming into Gardermoen Airport, as you can see over here, we are approaching the end of the tour of Norway. And beyond the horizon here lies Hamar, where we started the first video, which means we have almost come full circle. And in total we have, in these 5 videos, we have flown some roughly 1,200 kilometers, which is about the same distance as flying from London to Barcelona or New York to Chicago, to put it in American terms. And if you ever think about coming to Norway and driving around, then it's actually possible to do more or less the same trip that we did with the airplane here by car. And I have done it once, and I really recommend it. But I would also like to add that these 5 episodes have also skipped a lot of really, really nice and interesting places. And I'm especially sad to have missed the province of Møre og Romsdal, which is on the northwestern side of Norway. They have a lot of really beautiful fjords and mountains, and some really, really nice sort of coastal fishing culture villages. And of course the city of Ålesund, which I've claimed in a video to be the most beautiful city of Norway. Other places I would also recommend going to is the mountains of Rondane and the city of Trondheim behind. And if I ever had to settle somewhere in Norway which wasn't Oslo, I would definitely choose Trondheim, because the university culture, student culture, and sort of a relaxed atmosphere in that city is really, really nice. And then of course there's southern Norway, which is really, really idyllic in the summer. And finally northern Norway, which is just an amazing place. Northern Norway could have deserved an entire series just on its own. I'm gonna do a little bit of a steep landing here. really like to thank all the people who have watched this series, and especially those of you who liked and subscribed, and those of you who left comments, which has been really, really encouraging, and definitely gone way beyond anything I would have expected when I made the first video of this series. So thank you so much once again. I had a lot of fun making these videos, so it's possible that they might return at some point in the future with some new seasons. There were some requests for northern Norway, so I might do a tour of northern Norway at some point. I'm also very interested in other countries. I lived in Germany for a period of my life, and also lived in China quite recently. So it could be fun to maybe do a few episodes on those countries. And I also feel quite confident in talking a little bit about maybe Sweden and Denmark and Iceland. So if I ever take the time to make some new episodes, all of those places are on the table. And also Poland, maybe. I've been a lot to Poland. There's a lot of Polish people living in Norway, and I traveled with them to Poland a lot. So let's hope we can make a smooth landing for the final video. It's pretty smooth, although not really a center line. So welcome to Oslo Airport, Gardermoen. I think this is a pretty nice airport, at least comparing to the other European airports. I know in Asia there are some really crazy airports. It was designed by Nils Torp, the same company which designed the Viking ship building that I mentioned in the very first video of this series. And I think he also designed, or his company designed, the headquarters for British Airways back in the 80s, and also now the headquarters for China Airlines or China Eastern Airlines or something like that. So I guess this guy is pretty popular in the aviation industry. And they just finished a new terminal building for this airport. And it's not so sort of rich in natural materials and sort of soft-spoken, as I guess I would call the original terminal. At least the way the original terminal was before they stuffed it with shopping. But I still think it's a pretty nice new terminal, and all in all the airport is very easy to navigate. So that's why I like it so much. I don't think I'm gonna taxi all the way to the general aviation terminal. It's on the other side of the airport. So we'll just leave the airplane here. So thank you again. Thank you so much for watching and liking and subscribing. And it's been a lot of fun. And I hope to maybe see you once again at some point. And if you like these videos and you ever thought that you maybe would like to do something for your own city or country, wherever that might be, then please don't hesitate to make some videos and send me a link, because I'm a huge fan of slow TV and learning about new places. So thank you again, over and out.